And welcome everyone to our next panel of the day. My name is Dan Johnson. I am one of the co-founders of this event, and I'm honored to be the moderator for our first Q&A of the day with a very good friend of mine, Jeff Breslauer. Jeff is a gentleman I call a super fan, not only because he is a fan of comic books and superheroes, but he actually gets to do stuff that the rest of us would love to do, which is basically actually get to be a part of this world. Jeff, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and why don't you tell some of the folks some of the shows that you've been in?
Okay, and I am grateful to be a part of this world.
Well, I'm grateful to have you here with us, my friend.
Yeah.
You too. Happy to have you.
On my resume, I'm an actor, writer, voice artist, and puppeteer. And I got to work on The Adventures of Superboy. And the main episode, although I worked on in various aspects throughout the series, I'm mostly known for working on an episode called Paranoia. The guest stars on that episode were Noel Neal and Jack Larson. So there's that. I'm the voice of the Joker at Six Flags across America. And if the Joker is not in that particular Batman stunt show, because there were a number of them, then I would be the voice of 4 of the Riddler's henchmen. So there were times where I would be talking to myself, literally. And got to do various things. Got to work with, as a puppeteer, I got to work with Jim Henson and the Muppets. And what else? Voicing, like I said, voicing the Joker at Six Flags. Did about a dozen audio books. Some of them sci-fi comedy. In fact, 3 of them, it's a trilogy, 3 of them are on audible.com. And it's called Cheese Runners. Picture this. Aliens have conquered the known galaxy, and the only thing that they are addicted to is cheese, which is only found on Earth because that's where cows come from. So it becomes contraband. So instead of drug running or gun running, it's cheese running. And it's a sci-fi comedy. The first book is called Cheese Runners. The second one is Cheese Rustlers. And the third one is Cheese Lords. And they were all written by a guy named Chris A. Jackson, a sci-fi author. And he wrote these originally directly to audio, and I have been privileged to do the narration and give each character a different voice. So it's a lot of fun. And now I've been dealing with and getting more involved in writing, especially during this pandemic. I figure since I'm self-isolated, I will take the pandemic lemons and turn them into creative lemonade. So I'm keeping myself very busy.
Yes. I was going to ask with the cheese running, is there any jokes in there about cutting the cheese? It's like, we've got to cut this cheese right now. And, you know,
I don't remember. There were some jokes. A lot of it was situational. Like there was one where aliens have actually stolen Tillamook. And that's
not Gouda. That's not Gouda at all.
It's not Gouda at all. But you know, there's some jokes in there, and it's fun.
We got cheddar for the cheddar over here.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, you know me. I know I like bad puns and I like bad jokes. I've been honored to know you. We discussed this the other day. We've known each other for going on about 15 years now.
Yeah.
It's been an honor getting to know you.
North Carolina, the convention in North Carolina that we met, or where was it?
StellarCon in High Point, North Carolina. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember we were sitting next to each other and we started talking. I think you noticed issue I had, which had a cover of Superman and Batman, and we just started clicking right then.
Yeah.
And you know, again, finding out about your career, just all the stuff that you had done. up to that point was just super amazing. I remember one of the panels you were doing. You mentioned playing one of the penguins for the Henson Company,
Oh yeah, one of the dancing penguins.
and I made the joke that you were the only actor I knew that had played the Joker and the Penguin, and you still wanted to be my friend, which I'm like, it was meant to be. So hey.
Yeah, yeah.
There are a couple of questions I usually ask when I start talking to folks about their careers. Um, One of the first things I ask is what got you into acting, but I'd like to start something more basic. What made you a comic book fan? What made you a superhero fan?
Well, when I was a little kid, I was raised in Levittown, Long Island, and there was a comic book shop not far away from where I lived, and I used to walk there. And for some reason, the one of the owners uh, took a liking to me, and he would always, there was racks of comic books, and it was a drugstore. It was Rams Drugstore, RHAMS, and each letter was an initial of one of the co-owners of the family. And I knew H, I knew Howard. And whenever I would come in, he would always chase the other kids away. No reading in the store unless you're going to buy. Jeff, you could read. Go ahead, read one of the books. And I would look at the books. And my mother actually encouraged me to read comic books because it helped me to learn to read. And, I don't know whether she had a prescient thought or whatever, but when you think about it, being in the entertainment industry now, what is a comic book but a storyboard?
Yeah.
It's basically us telling a story in sequential art. So by doing that, I got my first, I guess, inkling into telling a story from beginning to middle to end, learning to read. The balloons with the dialogue helped as far as the characters interacting with each other. So it basically was something that was my jumping off point for being in the entertainment industry, for being an actor and for being a writer. So it was a big help. But it was one of the things that I was able to learn to read. And my mother didn't only get me the superhero comic books, the DCs, but she also used to get me classic comics, the ones where it's about Robin Hood and it's about the Last of the Mohicans and the classics, David Copperfield and those things, Treasure Island, in comic book form. So I got to learn to read the classics by doing that. Moby Dick, all of those special types of stories, not just the DC. But it was my introduction to reading when I was a little kid that got me started. And it turns out that even when I was little, I was always at least one step ahead as far as reading level in school. And a lot of it was due to my reading comic books.
Yeah. That's the way it was with me. My mom encouraged me to read comic books too because I had siblings that weren't huge readers, and she loved to read. She read everything she could get her hands on. And we talked about this before. I'm a firm believer that comic books are a gateway drug to literacy. You
Oh,
start
yeah.
getting comic books, then you move them up to short stories and novellas and novels, and eventually you're hitting the hard stuff like Russian novels, like War and Peace. And
Can you imagine the size of that graphic novel?
oh yeah, I could.
Yeah.
Well, now, what got you into to acting? I know a lot of folks that get into comics that are like real hardcore superhero fans. Like you usually think about going into the comic book industry, but you took the acting course
Oh,
and
yeah.
instead.
Well, It was actually a compulsion. It was something that chose me. I didn't choose acting. Acting chose me. And it was just the way I seem to have been wired. When I was also, when my age was still in single digits, I was the only kid on my block who knew who Jack Klugman was.
Mhm.
And this is decades before The Odd Couple. I would know him from The Twilight Zone and 12 Angry Men, things like that. So I knew all of the actors' names and was very interested in television. Television was my babysitter.
Yeah.
I was an only child raised by my mother and my grandmother. My mother would go to work and I would be sitting in front of the television, and I absorbed it. I was like a sponge, and that's just the way it was. And I was fascinated with it. I was fascinated with the characters and the stories behind them. And thankfully, back in those days in the 50s and the 60s, early 60s, everything was still very innocent, and everything had a moral, and everything had a um, a reason for it, and it was all very positive in its execution. And it's something that I picked up on, and it carried me through. So when I started to go into school, when I finally left high school, went into college, I decided to go into communications. And I would also write. I've written poetry when I was a kid and written some short stories. And I wound up in broadcasting. Now, being in communications, usually we would be behind the scenes. We would be studying to be technical directors, lighting people, sound and tech and camera work and that sort of thing. But in order for us to do our behind the scenes things, we had to have something in front of the camera to shoot. So I wound up in front of the camera more often than behind the camera. It just sort of happened. And I sort of glommed onto that. And that's where the love of it happened.
What was your first big break in acting?
First big break in acting. Um, I would have to say I've had a lot of little breaks. I don't think I've ever had a really big break. I guess one of the biggest breaks I had was, I've done a number of background work in the early days when I was first getting my acting legs in the business. One of the best things, and I always encourage it, is if you're starting off as an actor, do background work, do extra work. Reason is you get to learn how to behave on set.
Oh.
You get to learn the vernacular. You get to learn who's in charge. You learn how to take direction. You learn the vernacular. In other words, okay, everybody back to one. What does that mean? Back to your first position. So you learn various things. And I did background work on TV and film. And there are some times where you can actually play it's almost like Where's Waldo? Instead, it's Where's Jeffrey? But I think my biggest first big break was when I was cast in Police Academy 5. And the reason that happened was I had gotten married, and my first wife She was living in Washington, D.C., and I was living in New York. And we moved to Miami because she got a good job position. And when we moved down there, I sent out my picture and resume. There was no internet at that time, so I did a shotgun mailing, and I get this phone call from a Miami agent, and I had to go over to her agency, and she says, I have an audition for you now. I want you to go over to D. Miller Casting right now. It's for a movie. Okay. So I went there and I met with the director's name was Alan Meyerson, and the producer's name was Paul Maslansky. And I just had a blast doing this craziness in various speaking parts. And I booked Police Academy 5. Mm-hmm. And I was the news photographer, and I had speaking lines, and I still get residuals from it. So that was, I guess, one of my biggest breaks to date. And I've made some lifelong friends out of that. Michael Winslow is a good friend of mine, and Leslie Easterbrook. And my heart was broken a few weeks ago when Marion Ramsey passed away. You know, she played Hooks. So it was, I guess that could be one of my big breaks. Although I love just about everything I've done. I consider my big breaks as working with people I admired. One of my biggest breaks was working with Jim Henson and the Muppets. I worked on 2 of their projects, the Muppets Take Manhattan and the Muppets at Walt Disney World. And I even have a scene with Ralph the dog.
Yeah.
Where I play the pet care attendant. See, the Muppets infiltrate Walt Disney World, and they're all over the place causing mayhem. And Rolf comes onto the scene wearing Jim Henson's hat, and he says, "Hey, they got a pet care center here. Maybe they can help me." And I come out and I say, "Excuse me, who's your owner?" And he goes, "Owner? I have no owner, sir. But perhaps you can help me. You see, the Walt Disney World is such a big place. I don't know what to do with all this incredible freedom." And I drop a butterfly net over his head. And, working with Jim and the Muppets was one of my big breaks. On stage, my biggest break was working with Frank Gorshin, TV's Riddler. We did a play called Breaking Legs, which originally was on Broadway. And the big star name in that, on the Broadway production, was Larry Storch. Most people remember him as Corporal Agarn in F Troop. Yeah. However, did you know that Larry and I share a character?
Really?
We both voiced the Joker.
There you go. Yeah.
Larry voiced the Joker in I think it was the Super Friends or one of those during the 70s.
Series. Yeah, Filmation.
Yeah, Filmation.
He had the task of following Cesar Romero after the Batman series went off the air.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But I got to talk to Larry about that. I never met him face to face, but I got to talk to him because I'm still a friend of James Hampton, who was in Police Academy 5 also. So, and Jimmy was Dobbs, the bugler on F Troop.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that I have done, they've all been breaks in my career. I never really had a huge break. I don't have, I've done little guest parts in a number of things. I've never been in a continuous series as a continuous character, like two of the lovely people that I see here.
Yeah.
But I have a very eclectic, when I do a convention, I have a very eclectic table. There's a lot of little things on here. Like one of the things I did, which was another little break, I guest starred on a TV show, another DC character, Swamp Thing. I did the Swamp Thing TV show. And I got to play a 200-year-old man looking for the Fountain of Youth. And the thing about that episode, it was called The Chains of Forever, and it's season 3 of the TV show. But I got to be made up with prosthetics and makeup to look 200 years old. And I got to interact with, there's a special effects makeup artist who worked on the show, a guy by the name of Jim Benke. Absolutely super talented special effects makeup artist. We were going to shoot it at the beginning of the year, and I believe it was 1990, beginning of the year of 1990. Well, just before the Christmas holidays of '89, I was called to Universal Studios in Florida, and the special effects makeup man, Jim, had me sit in a chair, and he put the molding material over my face and my chest and my hand and my arms. What he was going to do is make plaster casts of me and make the models. And over the holidays, while I was with family and celebrating, he was going to build the prosthetics so that when the Christmas holidays were over and it was the new year and we were going to go and shoot, I would come in and everything would be ready for me. And that's what happened. And the way they did it was Dick Durock, who played Swamp Thing, would only work as Swamp Thing on the last day. It would be 3 days of shooting. So on the third day, he would get into his makeup and outfit. I got a chance to talk to him beforehand, and I said to him, I'm looking forward to seeing myself as 200 years old and all the makeup and the prosthetics. And he looked at me and he rolled his eyes and he says, yeah, that'll get old really quickly. Because he went through 2 movies and the TV show doing that, and it was starting to affect his skin.
Yeah.
So that was the last season that he was going to be doing the show. But it was funny because Jim and the assistant, they put me into all of this and they got me dressed up. You can see it on Facebook and the internet, but you look at a picture of me as 200 years old, and they led me to the setting, and everybody started to talk louder to me on the set. They're looking at this old man. Can I get you anything? It's like, I'm standing right in front of you, you jerk. Like, I'm not an old man. I just play one on television.
Well, that's how good the makeup was. I mean, people.
It was. Yeah. The first AD in an article of the Orlando Airport magazine said to the director, he says that's eerie, that's spooky, the way that looks, because my arms had veins in it and old, and everything was really extremely well done.
Was it one of those cases where it's like big burly guy comes up going, "Can I help you, sir?" And it's like, no, I'm fine. Another big burly guy comes up going, "I'm fine." Pretty young thing comes up going, "Can I help you, sir?" It's like, yes, help an old man, just keep him company. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
I was gonna say,
it's really a very it's a very good learning experience to be able to be a part of the industry, because when you're in whatever job you're doing, each thing you can learn from it. You can learn from it. You can expand on your skill sets. Everything is not the same, whether it's the script, whether it's acting along with a different person, because whenever you're acting with someone different, it's a difference in energy and chemistry, and you get to pick something up if you're paying attention. That's the thing, is acting is paying attention. When you are interacting with the makeup, like what I had with the 200-year-old man, one of my old acting teachers would call it things that come in contact with the body. And that's exactly what it is. As soon as I was put into the makeup and I saw myself in the mirror, I started to slouch over, and it just naturally happened.
Yeah.
And I became 200 years old. So when one of the beautiful things about being in our business is every time you're working, it's a new experience. You're not doing the same thing every single day as if you're working on an assembly line and you're putting in the same rivets into the same things all the time, and it becomes mind numbing, and it becomes like highway hypnosis. You start to zone out while you're doing the work. You pay attention, you learn things, you learn about other people, you learn about your surroundings, you learn about the environment around you, and all of a sudden you become a part of this new universe. As imaginary as it may be, there's a certain expansion of consciousness when you're involved in it to that level. And it sounds like a Zen type of a thing, but too many people in reality, when they're walking along, they're acting like we're in the zombie apocalypse. They're moving around like zombies. They're not paying attention to the outside world. Yeah. We as actors get a chance to, if we're paying attention, to see the outside world differently and more completely than just by existing in it. Instead of just existing in it, if you pay attention and you become an active part of it, all of a sudden everything comes alive. So when you're on a set with somebody, all of a sudden your surroundings become alive. The set becomes alive. If you have a prop, the prop becomes alive, and it's given meaning in a way that just holding it in your hand wouldn't. Yeah. It would just be there. But if you give it some sort of an emotional weight to it, just like you give an emotional weight to everything, all of a sudden it takes on this whole new life, and everything becomes more than it was.
It's sort of a situation where you've got so many people that are so focused on what's going to happen next, they can't appreciate what's happening right now.
Exactly.
They're so focused on the next moment, they're not living in the moment.
Yeah. Living in the moment is everything.
Yeah. Well, I think then I guess the best way to put it is you haven't had so many breaks as you've had moments, and you've had some wonderful moments.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's all moments.
Well, like I said, getting a chance to work on Swamp Thing. Like I said, I had a chance to interview Dick Durock a few years before he passed away. Very sweet man.
Yeah, yeah.
Wonderful history in Hollywood. He was talking about getting started on Lost in Space, in an episode of Star Trek, and very nonchalant about it. I was like, yeah, I did Lost in Space, I did Star Trek, and it was just like oh my God, this is awesome. But he's just like, it was a gig.
Yeah, exactly. Worked on the Incredible Hulk, worked on, he because of his height and his stunt working skills, he was pretty much used extensively more as a creature,
Yeah.
as whatever creature the story demanded. So he had a lot of experience with that.
Yeah. Well, I remember reading they were going to have Ray Wise play Swamp Thing.
Hmm.
And then I think they had Dick hired as the stuntman.
Yeah.
And it was a situation of Ray didn't want to do the makeup, and Dick looked so much better as Swamp Thing. That's how he ended up getting it. And he said it went from being this job where he's going to be working for a few weeks as a stuntman to becoming this character that defined his entire life, because he had people come up to him at conventions talk about, I love the movies or I love the show.
Yeah.
And it was just that wonderful experience for him. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you. It's wonderful. Yeah. Again, this is what I'm talking about. Being a super fan, you've had this opportunity to work on a show like that,
Hmm.
and going back working with Frank Gorshin. I mean,
Frank was amazing. You
I,
know,
I,
uh,
yeah,
I have to say, he became a good friend of mine for the last 10 years of his life.
Mhm.
We did Breaking Legs first at the Alhambra Dinner Theater in Jacksonville, Florida in 1995. And then we took it in 96, we took it to Poway in the San Diego area. And it was one of those instances. Usually when you do stage work is night after night, same lines, same situations. The only thing that was different basically was the audience. Now, the audience is sometimes able to make or break a performance. If you look at it like each audience is a different entity unto itself and it has its own energy. Some audiences are like, it's like acting for an oil painting. Everybody is just sitting there and you can't get a rise out of them no matter what you do. Then it's like trudging uphill. It's difficult. Then there are some audiences that are so with you and their energy is so enjoyable and they're getting it, and the energy from the audience can carry you through. It's close to flying and it's beautiful. You come off of there, you feel like $1,000,000. Well, Frank was the star of the show. He was the name in the show, starring Frank Gorshin. And it was a perfect way of having a spotlight on him. This could have been Frank Gorshin, and then in small letters, and company. But it wasn't. He treated everybody like an equal. He was very hands-on as far as helping all of us getting laughs out of every line that we possibly could. He was very giving as far as energy is concerned. And he had a lot of input as far as the script and as far as the characterizations and the shows itself. And it was just brilliant. He made it a great time for the audience. One thing that he would do, just because at the end of the show, not always, but usually during the curtain call, we would all join hands, bow, and then we would go like this to Frank. We would leave the stage. We would all go around and into the back and watch from the back. And Frank would do 30 minutes of his Vegas act for the audience just because.
Wow. That's
So
awesome.
he would try out new material and just to give the audience a little something extra. We were hysterical, because he would start off by saying, "Well, it's a pleasure here to be at the Alhambra Dinner Theater, right next door to nothing." No, it's true. You go down Beach Boulevard, according to the directions, you go down Beach Boulevard until you come to nothing. And right next door is the Alhambra Dinner Theater. From the other direction, same thing. But he would do his Vegas act and he would tailor it to the environment that he was in. And it would be not only a show, but it would be a complete evening out.
Wow.
The audience loved it and we loved it too. And there were times where he would take incidents from the audience into account. There was one evening. Now, the Alhambra Dinner Theater, I hope you don't mind my rambling like this.
No, you're fine.
But the Alhambra Dinner Theater is what we call a thrust stage. Now, in other words, that means 3 sides.
Yeah.
And the stage thrusts out. And there would be tables and chairs because it's a dinner theater. People would eat and then just sit in the same seats and watch the show. Well, there's a kitchen in the back. Now, usually during his monologue after the curtain call was when the fun really started, because during the show, we weren't allowed to, as we say, break the fourth wall and look out into the audience and comment on anything that might happen. But there was one instance where the tables, which were pretty close to the stage, one night there was a woman sitting at one of the tables, and she wasn't really looking at us all the time. She was looking at the woman in front of her. Now, the woman in front of her was facing pretty much away from us because she was she was a signer. She was signing to the woman who was looking at us.
Yeah.
So obviously it was a deaf person was there to see the show, and she brought her signer. Now, the thing is, when you're dealing with a thrust stage at a dinner theater, the audience is not too far away from the stage. So if I was to be interacting with you, and all of a sudden out of the corner of my eye, I'm seeing this,
Yeah.
it's a challenge for me to concentrate on this and not want to look over there.
Yeah.
So, but we made it through the show. Well, fade out, fade in. It's the curtain call. We all go like this. We bow and we go like this to Frank. Frank is doing his bit, telling jokes, and all of a sudden, he looks down at the signer going like this, and he stops the show and he looks at her and says, "That's not what I said. I didn't say that. No wonder why your friend isn't laughing. You're telling the jokes wrong." But everybody is on the floor laughing at that, the signer included. So, in that respect, he just would break the fourth wall, and that's exactly what he did. I had the opportunity to see Frank in Say Goodnight, Gracie.
Yes.
He did a one-man show about the life of George Burns.
I was going to say, that's where I got a chance to see him perform. And I remember being ticked off because I wanted to see Frank Gorshin, but I saw George Burns the entire time. He was so into that individual.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, what the funny bit was, I saw every incarnation because he would always invite me over to see it. And I saw he did it on Broadway at the Helen Hayes Theater. and I got to be in the audience. And at one point during the show, since it's a one-man show, he didn't have to worry about breaking the fourth wall or anything. He played the ghost of George Burns in Purgatory, making his case to God to allow him to enter heaven to be with Gracie. So it's all about his life. And at one point, he's there telling a story about Gracie. And then all of a sudden, in the audience, someone's cell phone goes off. And without breaking stride, he just sort of sits there and says, I wonder who that could be. And of course, the audience loses it. We couldn't have done that in Breaking Legs. We had to wait for the end where Frank could do that. But, you know, learning about the nuances of performing for a live audience is one of the things that I learned from Frank. You're on mute, Dan.
I'm sorry about that. I was going to say, we got a question from one of our folks. I was trying to get him to answer. I think he took off already.
Hi, Kelly. Somebody took off?
Well, I thought we had a question. I think the person may have left. I think he may have thought I was ignoring it. That wasn't the case, unfortunately, but sorry about that.
I talk too much. That's the problem.
That's okay. That's okay. Well, Jeff, I was going to say, we are coming up on 2:50. We've got a panel coming up at 3 o'clock. Time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it? I did want to ask you real fast if you would tell me about my personal favorite moment you had, which is working on the Superboy series, and who you got to work with on that show.
Well, I got to work with Jack and Noel, worked with Gerard, worked with a guy named Jordan Williams, who was the ringleader of our alien group on Paranoia. Working on Superboy, it was basically a lot of it had to do more with interacting with each other. Although I did get to act with Jack. I interacted with Jack a lot more than with Noel. It just so happened where I played an alien cop, and Jack actually grabbed the gun from my holster, and he is holding it on the people at the Paranoia, at the Paranormal Institute, where Robert Levine and Gerard and Stacy and everybody worked. So we mainly acted with each other in the episode, and we were also acting with the special effects. Like as we're coming out of the elevator and all of a sudden Superboy flies down, and I think in the last panel I told you about the flying, the descent, the quick descent with the soft landing. He comes into the through the revolving door into the building, and Jordan Williams, who's the ringleader, he looks at Superboy and he says, "Oh no, not him again." And I say, I give him a billy club that I had as the cop, and I said, "Come on, there's 4 of us and 1 of him." And Superboy says, "I like those odds." And then he inhales and he blows the super breath. He blows us into the elevator. So it's basically now all of a sudden the special effects people have to come in with the big fans emulating his super breath. That blows us into the elevator. So of course, a lot of it is us selling the effect. That's a good thing to know when you're an actor is if there's some sort of either a superpower being used against you, or if you're in a fight with another actor, if your character is in a fight with another character, it's the victim that sells the shot. The victim is the one that makes it look real. So when we are being blown into the elevator, our flailing and moving back like this is what sells the super breath. Classic example, Star Trek. The very first time you see Spock use the Vulcan neck pinch, when Kirk is split into two Kirks, one evil, one good. It was Leonard Nimoy who came up with that. Instead of just overpowering Kirk, wouldn't a Vulcan have something like, and he used that. But it was Kirk, it was Shatner who sold the result of the Vulcan neck pinch.
Right.
So basically the victim is the one that sells the shot. So it's a good thing to learn as far as that's concerned. So between acting with the people at the Paranormal Investigation Institute, where Gerard and Stacy and Robert and Matt and all of those people worked, got to work with them, and I found out that Gerard and I were born on the same street.
Really?
Yeah. I had made mention to Jack and Noel that I was from the Bronx originally. And Gerard overheard and he goes, "You're from the Bronx? I'm from the Bronx." I said, "Yeah, well, my first address was on Longfellow Avenue." "Hey, mine was on Longfellow Avenue too." Turns out he was just down the street from me, although I wasn't there when he was born because he's 5 years younger than I am.
Yeah.
But still, there was that connection.
That's awesome.
So yeah, one of the beautiful things about not only acting with all of these people and acting in these wonderful, wonderful shows throughout my career, but there's a connection, there's a feeling of being at home. It's like when I come to the Superman celebration as many years as I possibly can, I feel like I'm at home because I'm with an extended family. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, all of you people are part of my extended family. That's just the way it is. And I guess one of the reasons why I ramble so much is I'm amongst people who get what I'm talking about.
Well, there's a common language. It's the whole idea we all speak geek and we all speak comic book, and that's
Exactly. But it's something that I don't get enough of.
yeah. Well, we
And
have a shared
I get
mythology.
it here.
Like I said, for myself, speaking for myself and everyone else on staff, we're always glad to have you. We're honored that you joined us, and I am grateful to you for getting up at 8 o'clock this morning, your time, to be a part of all this.
Yeah, I had to get up and wake the fish and
I owe you a big one. I do. I
oh,
really do.
it's my pleasure. Believe me, I was up before the alarm clock because this is something that I'm anxious to be a part of.
Well, like I said, we're always happy to have you, my friend. And I wish we had more time, but I saw we're creeping up on 3 o'clock, and we've got Kelly's cosplay panel that'll be coming up very soon. So I am going to say thank you, my friend, for joining us and the conversation. But the thing about Gerard, that's something that's brand spanking new. I always learn something new from you, so that's why I love talking to you. And I am going to encourage everybody, if you get a chance to, stop by our Facebook page. And if you want, you can also stop by my personal page. I've got information about how you can order autographs from all our celebrity guests this weekend, including Jeff. Jeff has some wonderful photos to pick from, including his appearance on Superboy, Swamp Thing, The
Yeah,
Muppet.
the picture you get to see me is the 200-year-old man.
Yeah. Even Police Academy, which I thought was awesome. I love those pics. We would need another hour to talk about everything that Jeff has done, including the Doctor Who film that he was a part of, his role in Punisher. But he's got photos of all these different things that he's done, these moments of his life. And I would encourage everybody to stop by and pick up one of these. Jeff, again, thank you for joining us. It's always an
you,
honor
sir.
and a pleasure, my friend.
Always a pleasure to see you and to see everybody here.
Awesome. And I'm going to go ahead and run a promo real fast from some more of our sponsors. And then I'm going to turn this over to Kelly. Kelly's a lot better looking to look at than I am. So you guys are in for a break, okay? Thanks again, Jeff.
Thank you, Dan.
I'll just be a moment.
And by the way, if you go to Pete and Pete's, The Adventures of, I did a podcast with them, and at the end they asked me to do the Joker voice as a promo for them. So somewhere on their podcast, there's me as the Joker. I've been a Joker ever since.
I'm trying to find the sharing.
I'm gonna start listening to their podcast because they're such nice guys.
Yeah, and
Okay.
Pete also worked on Superboy.
Hello, congoers! I hope we're all having a blast here at the virtual Super Friends celebration. I am Cody J. Flores, indie published author of the Black Rain series and other stories. It's the start of a new year, and there's no better place to be safe like staying indoors and binge reading. And if you're a fan of cyberpunk, action, conspiracies, and a little bit of humor, look no further than One Short Night, a non-stop thrill ride about the misadventures of a mercenary father picking up odd jobs to make a living in a cyberpunk world. And as this series progresses, so too does the action, the mysteries, and the body count. Their short length offers an easy read with 3 books in the series so far, the third one just being recently released, and that's enough material to let you escape from the real world for a little bit. But this weekend, and this weekend only, from January 15th to January 17th, 2021, I will be donating 10% from every paperback and Kindle copy sold to the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. The Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation is dedicated to curing spinal cord injury by advancing innovative research and improving quality of life for individuals and families impacted by paralysis. That's right, 10% from every paperback or Kindle copy sold from my collection of published works on Amazon.com from January 15th to January 17th, 2021 will be donated to the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. Just go to Amazon.com and type in Cody J. Flores. That is CODYJ.Flores. I hope you're all enjoying the virtual Super Friends celebration, and thank you in advance to anyone that checks out my books and decides to help out for a really great cause.